की पूरी
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. British Foreign Minister David Lammy and US Vice President J.D. Vance will meet Ukrainian and European allies in Britain today to discuss President Trump's push for peace in Ukraine. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke to President Zelensky ahead of the security meeting. This development comes as President Zelensky says peace talks without Ukraine will not achieve anything as the US and Russia prepare for discussions on August the 15th. He reaffirms Ukraine will not surrender land despite Trump's hint at territorial concessions. Several Arab and Muslim countries have condemned Israel's plan to take control of Gaza City as a dangerous escalation. 20 nations, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, have called it a flagrant violation of international law and an attempt to entrench illegal occupation. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan urged Muslim nations to unite and mobilize the international community against Israel's plan to take control of Gaza City. Fidan made the comments after talks in Egypt, where he also announced an emergency meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Iran has arrested 20 people alleged to be operatives of Israel's Mossad spy agency in recent months, with the judiciary warning of no leniency. This comes after the execution of nuclear scientist Rosber Vadi, who was convicted of spying for Israel. 5 Lebanese soldiers were killed in an explosion while removing munitions from a Hezbollah military facility in South Lebanon. The incident occurred during efforts to disable unexploded ordnance left from the recent Israel-Hezbollah war. NATO has hailed the signing of a US-brokered peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan as a significant step forward. NATO spokeswoman Alison Hart thanked US President Donald Trump for his efforts in bringing peace to the region. Thousands gathered in Nagasaki to honor the 80th anniversary of the city's atomic bombing, with the mayor warning of the risks of nuclear war in today's global conflicts. The US dropped Fat Man bomb on August the 9th of 1945, killing 27,000 people instantly. Now we start in Egypt, where the foreign ministers of Egypt and Turkey jointly condemned Israel's plan to expand control over Gaza. They called the move a dangerous escalation and urged Muslim nations to unite against it. Both warned the plan would destroy chances for peace and violate international law. The meeting came as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation called for urgent global action to halt Israel's plan, while mediators continue efforts for a Gaza ceasefire. Let's listen in to what the Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan have said.
تحدثنا عن القرار الكابينة الإسرائيلي مؤخرا بتوسيع نطاق الاحتلال والسيطرة على قطاع غزة وتوسيع الاحتلال والعمليات العسكرية، واتفقنا تماما على الإدانة الكاملة لهذا القرار بطبيعة الحال، وأكدنا على أهمية تكاتف جهودنا المشتركة وعملنا المشترك لمجابهة هذا القرار بمختلف الوسائل وتكثيف الضغوط الإقليمية والدولية على إسرائيل لردعها عن اتخاذ هذا
Bildiğiniz gibi Netanyahu hükümeti yeni bir adım attı ve Gazze'yi tamamen işgal etme niyetini açıkladı. Biz bu planı sonuna kadar reddediyoruz. Söz konusu plan İsrail'in yayılmacı ve soykırımcı politikasının yeni bir aşamasıdır. Bu adım karşısında İslam dünyası olarak tam bir dayanışma içinde hareket etmeli ve uluslararası toplumu harekete geçirmeliyiz.
Meanwhile, Russia has warned that Israel's new plans for Gaza will worsen an already dire situation. The Foreign Ministry reaffirmed Moscow's call for an immediate ceasefire and the release of all hostages. It urged all parties to avoid further escalation and prioritize steps towards ending the conflict. We're now joined by our guest. Apologies, an issue there. We stay in the Middle East for our next story, where Iran has openly opposed Lebanon's decision to disarm Hezbollah. Speaking on Saturday, Ali Akbar Velayati, senior advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has said Tehran is certainly opposed to any disarmament of the group. He stressed that Iran has always supported what it calls the people and resistance of Lebanon and will continue to do so. Hezbollah, which is backed by Tehran, is both a powerful political force and an armed militia in Lebanon. The remarks come amid increasing calls from within Lebanon and the international community for the group to be disarmed, citing security concerns. Iran's statement underscores its continued political and military backing for Hezbollah, signaling Tehran's resistance to any move that could weaken its influence in the region. We're now joined by our guest today, Ahmed Fatwa. He's a spokesperson for the Fatah movement, and he joins us live from Ramallah. Thank you very much, Ahmed, for joining us on NewsX World. Let's first talk about this new military operation that has been approved by Netanyahu's security cabinet, a plan to take over the entirety of the Gaza Strip, including Gaza City, of course, where there is much stress and much worry that this is only going to cause more bloodshed. We have got a statement from 20 Arab and Muslim-led countries condemning the Israeli plan to expand over the Gaza Strip. However, just yesterday, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has commented that these plans to conquer Gaza City do not go far enough. What are your thoughts on that statement from Bezalel Smotrich, who is Benjamin Netanyahu's finance minister?
Thank you for having me. Smotrich said what's even worse. He said we want to erase the Palestinian state, and that's, shed the light about what's going on since the beginning of this war, since the beginning of this occupation, which is the erasure of the Palestinian civilization, the indigenous people of Palestine from their lands to build a colonial entity, and that is the Israeli state. Of course, what's the plan coming out from the cabinet is very dangerous, very critical. It endangers the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that are already suffering deeply from starvation, from indiscriminate bombardment, from all sorts of aggression and violence against them by Israeli army that is crossing all the red lines. It also endangers the lives of the hostages that they claim they want to release. And most importantly, it is a very great violation and a death sentence to peaceful resolution for the question of Palestine and for any future peace. Occupying Gaza would endanger the Palestinian state, because now we have two issues here. We have the occupation plan by the Israeli government to occupy Gaza and the annexation plan of the West Bank that want to annex about 60% of the West Bank. That makes there's no Palestinian state on the ground, and it stands in defiance to the international resolution, to the agreed upon agreements on 1994 and in all the what's followed in the UN resolutions. So that is in defiance of all the world will, not just the Arabs or the Palestinians alone.
Ahmed, we've just seen this statement with the foreign ministers in Turkey jointly condemning Israel's plan, and we've obviously seen that statement that came from 20 different Muslim-led governments condemning the same plan which we're talking about. Do you think, what are your thoughts about the international community's response to this Israeli operation? And given the regional alliances in the West Asia region, do you think that these countries are in fact doing enough to support the cause in Gaza?
No, this is the mission not only for the Arab world or the Muslim world or the Western Asian countries. This is the mission of the international community. This is what Israel is doing is in violation of the essence of the UN Charter and all the relative resolution for the case of Palestine. So what is demanded now from the entire international community, from the UN Security Council, to take position, because obviously the Israeli government is not listening to condemnation, is not listening to rhetoric, is not listening to any letters. They want action on the ground. Right now they are blocking all peace efforts. So we have to remove these blocks, and it is upon the international community that hold these keys to push forward for a serious policy that would impose the two-state solution. And we have to rely on the declaration that came from the high-profile two-state solution conference in New York about the reconstruction and invoking peace in Gaza and ending the war, which come in a very dire time, and that resolve all the problems that Netanyahu is claiming that it is the issue. They spoke about releasing the hostages. They spoke about disarming Hamas and sending the weapons to the Palestinian Legitimate Authority. They spoke about for a Palestinian committee from under the umbrella of the Palestinian Authority to go back to Gaza and rule, so Hamas stepped down from power. And we spoke about all the important lines for the two-state solution matter. So Netanyahu actually is blocking that efforts. So it's upon, and frankly here, it's upon the United States to exert the pressure needed on Israel to stop its violation and to go for that plan that comes in conformity with all international resolutions.
Yes, Ahmed Fatwa there, spokesperson for the Fatah movement. Thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. We now move over to Europe, where Iran will not permit the US-backed Trump route corridor linking Azerbaijan to its Nakhichevan enclave. An advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei said Ali Akbar Velayati warned the plan threatens South Caucasus security and called it an impossible notion. The corridor is part of a recent US brokered peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan aimed at ending decades of conflict. While leaders from both countries praised the agreement as historic, key issues like Nagorno-Karabakh's status remain unsolved. Iran's rejection highlights ongoing regional tensions despite hopes for lasting peace. We're now joined by Keith Vaz, who is a former UK minister. He joins us live from London. Keith, just first of all, before we dive into the more recent developments, I want you to tell us a little bit more about this conflict that has been going on for decades and why this peace deal is so significant for the region.
Good afternoon, Thomas from London. I think I'll need more than a few seconds to tell you about a conflict that's been going on for decades. Of course, it's over territory. This has been going on, as you said, for a very, very long time. The decisions taken in Washington, the signing of those agreements, is not really going to end the distrust that exists between these two countries, but it is more likely to be a temporary measure that will allow Azerbaijan access to its enclave. The Caucasus were, of course, originally part of the wider Soviet Union sphere of influence. And this particular issue has been going on for decades. So the agreement that's been reached is not going to solve that issue overnight. What it does do in itself is to provide a corridor which allows access for Azerbaijan to its territory, to its enclave, with the agreement of Armenia. The concerns, however, from the Armenians are that they will lose their sovereignty, and therefore they will be, in a sense, at the mercy of the Americans. And there's now new concern that you've just alluded to, that the Iranians, who are one of the superpowers in the local area, don't like the deal at all. And if they want to stop it and scupper it happening, then it's unlikely to get to the fruition that Donald Trump would like.
Yes, thank you very much for giving us that insight, Keith. We unfortunately don't have enough time to stay on this story. We will move on and move over to Europe next, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he has discussed the diplomatic situation in Ukraine with French President Emmanuel Macron. The call came amid reports that Russia and the United States have agreed to hold a summit without Ukrainian representation. Zelensky, speaking on social media, said he was grateful for France's support and stressed the need to ensure Moscow does not, in his words, deceive anyone again. The comments follow growing concern in Kyiv that crucial decisions about the war's future could be made without its direct involvement. The Ukrainian leader has consistently warned Western allies against any deal that will legitimize Russian territorial gains or undermine Kyiv's sovereignty. A huge development today, Keith, in this conflict, a direct meeting between the Russian president and the U.S. president. However, no Ukrainian involvement. Do you think Zelensky's worries here are warranted, especially given Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's history, and especially in this second term?
You're absolutely right, Thomas. This is a huge development. If indeed it happens, we've not had the Kremlin confirming this. We've had President Trump saying it's going to happen. So from that point of view, he wouldn't say it, I think, if there wasn't going to be a move. It's supposed to be happening in Alaska for some reason. I can't myself see Vladimir Putin going to Alaska to have a meeting. I could understand Reykjavik or somewhere that is relatively near, but Alaska? Anyway, this is what Trump has announced. If it happens, it's massive, of course, and it will take in, I would imagine, more than just a discussion on what's happening in Ukraine. That immediately gets Zelensky worried, and he starts ringing his big allies, Macron, Chancellor of Germany, Merkel, and I should imagine he's on his way to London as we speak to try and speak to Keir Starmer or speak to him on the phone. So that's what he normally does. I mean, Trump has made it clear in the past that he knows there can't be an agreement unless Ukraine is at the table. Of course, he can't cede sovereignty of another country like Ukraine to the Russians. It's not going to happen. But this could be a preliminary meeting. Fantastic television. But in terms of implementation, it can't be implemented without the agreement of the Ukrainian people, which means president, cabinet, then parliament, possibly even a referendum if you're swapping territory. This can't be done in Alaska.
Keith Vaz, thank you very much. Do stay with us, and we will, of course, bring you all updates in regards to that ongoing and developing situation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. However, next we move to the United States, where US President Donald Trump says the White House will hold a press conference on Monday to address violent crime in Washington, D.C. He claims the city has become one of the most dangerous in the world. Trump says the announcement will outline measures to essentially stop violent crime. Earlier this week, he suggested deploying the National Guard to patrol the Capitol streets. The move would mark a significant step towards federal control over the city. The president's comments come amid growing debate over crime rates in Washington and his administration's approach to law and order in the nation's capital. We are once again joined by Keith Vaz. Keith, what do you make of this statement? We have seen Donald Trump deploy the National Guard before in Los Angeles. What are your thoughts and what's your analysis of how Donald Trump uses the power of the executive branch to deploy these troops to sometimes cities without the governor's consent? What are your thoughts, Keith?
Well, it's a very interesting move. He's tried to take over Greenland without success. He wants Canada to be the 51st state, and they said no. So he's moving closer to home, Washington, D.C. He will obviously need the consent or at least some kind of dialogue with the mayor of D.C. Washington, D.C., of course, is not a state in its own right, but it is a territory that has its own mayor. So he probably feels, since the White House is there and the seat of government is there, that he should have some kind of better control over the local area. it is unprecedented. You're right, he has sent the National Guard in before to other parts, but it's unprecedented to have this kind of interest. Where he's right is that there is a big problem of crime, not so much in the central part of Washington, D.C., where you can't move for traffic police, but also those of us, including you, I'm sure, Thomas, who visited D.C., is really a tourist capital as well. So people do go there from other parts of the country. The level of violent crime is 207% above anywhere else in America, and the crime against property is 143% above the national average. So someone's obviously had dinner with Donald Trump and said, this is a dreadful situation, and he's decided to take over control of law and order in the local area. He will find some pushback from the mayor, I would imagine, because the mayor of Washington, D.C. is the person who actually controls policing in the area. So he'll need to include him in whatever goes on. But it is a bold move, and perhaps a recognition that after Greenland and Canada, maybe it's best to just stay at home.
Yes, Keith, thank you very much for your insight on the programme. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. We now move on, and we have some breaking news coming in from South Asia, where India has welcomed the agreement between the United States and Russia to hold a summit in Alaska on August the 15th. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said the meeting offers more hope of ending the war in Ukraine and opening the door to peace. It quoted Prime Minister Narendra Modi's repeated message that this is not an era of war. India says it fully endorses the upcoming talks and is ready to support international efforts to resolve the conflict. We're now joined by Shruti Dasgupta, who's an international affairs expert. She joins us live from New Delhi. Shruti, what are your thoughts on Prime Minister Modi weighing in upon these talks on August the 5th, these direct talks in Alaska between the Russian president and his American counterpart, Trump?
Well, I look at it positively because if you notice, just before these statements, he has had a conversation with Putin. We've had Ajit Doval himself in Moscow talking to Putin and his team. So I understand that probably India has played a larger role of bringing Putin to the table to talk with Trump and try and find a way out of this very, very long, 3-year-long war. I also know that India has not just now, even before, has always spoken about this very statement when he has said this is not the era of war. This is not the first time he said it. In every nation that he's visited, including the 5-nation tour he just completed before the G7 meeting, he said these very statements from every pulpit, every forum. So it basically means that we stand very firm with the fact that a war in such a scenario where every nation is very well armed would lead to a greater amount of human casualty and chaos. It also shows that India knows exactly what is happening behind the doors of power. They know what Putin wants. And if you have been following what Trump has been saying, he has he's very specifically stated that maybe Ukraine will have to trade off a little bit of their land to ensure that the peace comes. It is complicated, he has said. But which swatch of land is actually going to trade hands is not clear as of now. But it shows that Trump and Putin both have been talking to people, and probably someone more sensible than Zelensky himself, I'm sorry, but who want to make sure that the war, the NATO's war, comes to an end.
Yes, Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for your analysis and insight on that topic. We now move on and over to Europe, where in southern France, a massive wildfire that began on Tuesday has spread across 16,000 hectares, killing 1 person and injuring almost 19 firefighters and 6 civilians, and also destroying dozens of homes. Regional Fire Chief Colonel Christophe Malgny said the blaze is contained but not under control, warning it will not be fully subdued before Sunday evening. All local roads have now reopened, but access to the wildfire zone remains restricted due to the risk of flare-ups. Let's see what Regional Fire Chief Colonel Christophe Malgny has to say.
Pronostic, nous on est sur chaque jour, chaque matin, chaque soir à faire le bilan. C'est pour ça qu'il y a ce point ce matin. On sait que la journée de demain va être une journée difficile, parce que les conditions météo sont réunies. Compte tenu de l'étendue de ce sinistre, je ne pense pas que dans tous les cas, avant dimanche soir, on puisse avoir une situation qui évolue sur le plan de la maîtrise. Vous voyez. Peut-être pas des semaines, mais en tout cas, voilà, jusqu'à dimanche soir, le feu.
In Greece, authorities are taking stock after wildfires swept through suburbs of Athens, forcing mass evacuations and killing at least one person. The blaze, among the worst in living memory, destroyed homes and businesses, with flames reaching 25 meters high. More than 700 firefighters, backed by aircraft and international assistance, battled the inferno before winds eased, leaving only scattered hotspots to be contained. This is what the local homeowner, Irina Becker, had to say.
Κάηκαμε όλος καιρός εδώ πέρα, αβοήθητοι είμαστε, πυροσβεστικά δεν ήρθανε, εδώ το σπίτι στο έλεος του Θεού. Και εγώ ήταν μόνο του έτσι, τίποτα, καμία βοήθεια.
Meanwhile, in Spain, wildfires burned 650 hectares, prompting evacuations and disrupting train lines between Madrid and Oliva. Roads were closed as military emergency units joined firefighting operations. Much of southern Europe remains on high alert as an August heatwave fuels extreme wildfire risk across France, Spain and Greece. We're now joined by Desmond Majek Odubni. He's an environmentalist and he joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining us here on the programme. We've seen a huge trend in heat waves in Europe, sparking these wildfires, particularly across southern Europe. What does this say about the current climate crisis, and why is it affecting Europe in particular?
Yes, well, each country, each continent seems to be having its turn. The fires are spreading. The fires have been predicted. And what we're getting from the reports, like the one in Greece, they said it's unprecedented. So it's not just Europe. It's also in America, in California. Oh, yes. And also in Arizona. The fire that's been burning there since the 4th of July is still less than 50% under control. It's burnt over 140,000 acres. And ironically, what happened in America on the 4th of July, they had an unprecedented flood in Texas that killed loads of people. And at the same time, this particular fire in Arizona was triggered by a lightning bolt on the 4th of July, America's Independence Day, when America is celebrating her independence. America who is now being led by a climate change denier. And all the scientists are telling us, at least 90% of them are telling us that this is a classic symptom of climate change. So from America to Asia, Africa, we've had ours, and now it's Europe's turn. It's like nature is telling humanity, wake up from your foolish slumber, because you must change your attitudes. It is your attitude and your unbridled lust for just making profit, no matter what the consequences, putting profit ahead of people and the planet, that is causing this. And the sad thing is it's going to get a lot worse. We just hope that we wake up in time so it won't get too much worse than what it is. Next year, the year after that, will still bring a lot of the effects of climate change. We've got to wake up to this reality and stop the pollution, stop the destruction of the forests and the green sources that are able to ameliorate this problem. It's time for change.
Yes, Desmond, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme and for your insight. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this hour, but we will continue to bring you all news updates from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.